Welcome, travelers, to my realm of nightmares. Allow me to be your personal assistant. Come in, take a seat, get comfortable. For when you step into my realm, there's no stepping out.
A couple looking for their first home together finds one that's perfect and cheaper than what is currently on the market. It's a little worse for wear, but with a little TLC, it'd be a home they could raise a family in. That's to start to most horror movies you see nowadays, but somehow not too far-fetched, right? My girlfriend Sarah and I were that couple. We were young, in love, and wanted to live together so badly that we gathered up what little money we had to find our own place. Honestly, I was content with an apartment in the middle of town, but she convinced me that a mortgage would be cheaper and assured me it would be worth it in the long run. I wanted to rip my hair out as we searched for a house that we wanted within our price range. Everything was so ridiculously overpriced that we almost gave up until we got a phone call from a mom. She had heard from a friend of a friend who knew someone that was putting their house up for sale. We called the number that she had texted us, and we talked to the previous owner, Joseph. On the phone, we were met with a jovial, husky voice of a man who told us the house had originally belonged to his uncle. Joseph's uncle had left the house to him, but he had no need for it and wanted to sell it. Sarah and I were trying to contain our excitement when he told us how much he wanted for the home, so we quickly made arrangements to check the house out before we made any details. The following morning, we went to the address he had sent us. The house was in a rural area about 30 minutes away from town, and when we got there, we were in awe. It was so picturesque, with its long gravelly driveway that led us to the beautiful faded white farmhouse. To be honest, I was still in shock at the price Joseph had set. This was a lot of house and land. There had to be something wrong with it, right? When we reached the house, there was a small red truck parked at the end of the driveway. A burly man, dressed in jeans and a red flannel shirt, stood at the front of the steps, looking up towards the house. We got out of our car and called it a greeting to him, but he didn't break his gaze until we got a couple of steps away from him. He turned to look at us and shook his head a bit as if he were shaking himself from a trance.
"Oh, sorry about that. Haven't had my coffee yet,"
he said as he turned to face us, flashing us a cheerful grin.
"So, what do you think? Quite a beauty, eh?"
"Oh, it's so cute,"
Sarah answered as she stepped beside me. I let out an awkward chuckle as I responded, "Yeah, it's almost too good to be true." Joseph looked at the both of us, then back towards the house.
"Yeah, well, it'd be a shame to let such a good house go to waste, and I know how hard it is to get a house these days. Anyways, come on, let me show you around."
We followed him up the couple steps and through the front door. He gave us a bit of the history as he showed us around the house. It was built in the mid-80s by the family of his uncle's wife. They moved in after they had married to take care of her parents until they had passed. They stuck around though, didn't have a family of their own, and Joseph told me that they had both also died here. I turned to look at my wife to see that she was as pale as a sheet.
"So, people have died here?"
Sarah said in a low voice. Joseph's smile faded suddenly, dropping as she asked the question. He forced a smile and asked,
"Oh, is that a problem?"
Before she could respond, I cut in with a sharp, "Oh no, not at all." Her face looked up at me with a mix of shock and anger as she grabbed my arm to pull me to the side.
"Are you fucking serious right now?"
she shouted at me under her breath. I wanted to say that she was overreacting, but I didn't want to dig my own grave, so I responded as calmly as I could. Listen, babe, we've been searching for months, and this is the best deal we could possibly get. Sarah's face turned to full anger, and I braced myself for impact. We excused ourselves from Joseph for about 10 minutes as we walked outside to weigh our options. Ultimately, we decided to go on with the tour and decide from there. We went back inside the home and looked around to find Joseph, but we couldn't find him. We figured he must have gone upstairs, so we went up to look around the few bedrooms and still no trace of him. At this point, we had given ourselves our own tour. That's when we stepped into the kitchen to find a door that led down to a basement. He had to be down here. The lights were on, so with Sarah behind me, we cautiously made our way down to the basement. Each of our steps caused the old wood underneath to creak so loudly, it was as if it were screaming as we made our way down. When we finally made it to the bottom, we turned to find Joseph standing in the center of the empty basement, staring at a dirty wall. I slowly stepped behind him, calling out to him as I got closer to him, but he didn't respond. I took a hand and placed it upon his left shoulder to grab his attention. "Hey, man, are you okay?" I asked warily. Again, he jolted out of a trance and looked back at me. "Oh, sorry. I was doing some math in my head. I found a bit of water damage on the wall here, so I was going to take it off my asking price for you." I looked at the wall, and sure enough, there was some discoloration on the pale white surface. It didn't look like mold. Not sure how else to explain it, aside from faint black splotches of ink. I looked back to Joseph as he offered to continue the rest of the tour of the home. Sarah seemed a bit more reluctant, but we agreed, and he continued showing us the rest of the home. The only thing that felt off was Joseph's odd behavior. Every now and then, his words would trail off as he shifted his attention towards the wall. The three of us walked outside, and Joseph turned to us. "So, what do y'all think?" Sarah looked at him, then looked at me.
Well, honestly, the fact that a few people died here is a bit unsettling.
Joseph's grin quickly shifted into a frown. "Oh, I can assure you this old place is worth the buy. On that note, let me change up the offer a bit." Our jaws nearly dropped when he told us how much cheaper the price was than when we first talked about. He told us that he noticed the place would definitely be a fixer-upper, and that he'd be more than happy to know that his place would be going to good hands. Sarah and I talked a bit. With our budget and the price of the house, we'd be saving so much money. I shook Joseph's hand, and we quickly got the paperwork situated. A couple weeks later, everything we owned was packed into a moving truck, and we headed towards our new home. We didn't have much, so Sarah and I did everything by ourselves. We were so excited to move in that maybe that gave us strength. Thanks to all the money we saved from Joseph's generous offer, we were able to get some furniture delivered. But that was going to take a bit longer, so all we had was my mattress. We decided to drop off all of our boxes into the living room, then decide where everything else goes afterwards. As I was placing a box down, I couldn't help but notice something on the wall. I stopped Sarah as she dropped off a box behind me. "Hey, are you seeing what I'm seeing?" I asked as I pointed at the wall in the living room. She followed the direction of my finger and saw that on the wall, what looked like a very faint black stain had looked eerily similar to a face. I stepped closer to the wall, and sure enough, there was what looked like the outline of a head. Long hair that stretched like tendrils, two beady eyes, and pursed lips. I know the human eye tries to find faces and things, but this was uncanny. I placed my hand upon the image on the wall. I felt a cold sting underneath my fingertips. Sarah let out a little chuckle.
Fixer-uppers, right? We'll paint over it or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I said as I felt a wave of unease. As I stared at the stain on the wall, it looked as though the face, or what looked like a face, its eyes were staring at me. We continued the rest of the day unpacking and putting things in their new spots. It goes without saying that we were completely exhausted. That afternoon, we went back to town to grab dinner. We raised our glasses to a job well done and chowed down on some food. I tried to shake the feeling of unease, but in my mind, I kept remembering that damn stain on the wall, that face. It was around 8 o'clock when we finally returned to the house to see that the front door was wide open and all the lights were on. I told Sarah to call the cops, and I rushed inside the house to see if there was an intruder. I looked through every inch of the house, nothing seemed out of place, and I didn't find anyone at all. I went down the stairs into the basement, and I froze in place as I looked on the wall. The stains on the wall? They were now faces. About 6 of them now formed on the wall of the basement that Joseph was staring at. Despite being a faint outline, I can make out the same features on each one. All of them were staring at me, and each one of them had their mouths open in a silent scream.
Honey?
Sarah called out to me from upstairs, and I heard another set of footsteps with hers. I went back upstairs to see Sarah with a police officer. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and told me that I had been gone for so long that she and the officer looked around for me. The police officer stuck around for a while as I told him what happened, and that despite what we found, nothing seemed to be stolen. He assured us to call him if anything else came up, and told us to have a good night. After that scare, a good night was the least thing we would have. Sarah was upstairs taking a shower, and I sat on the floor of the unfurnished living room, staring at the wall. The face that I had seen earlier there was now gone. I didn't tell Sarah about the faces I had seen. I'm sure I was just tired from all the moving. I even went back to the basement, and sure enough, there wasn't any faces on the walls. I laughed to myself and went upstairs to the master bedroom. I saw Sarah standing in the bathroom with a towel wrapped around her. I tried to be cool and walked towards her, wrapping my arms around her, when I noticed that she was shaking. I spun her around, and I saw her eyes were wide with absolute terror. I asked her what happened. After a couple of minutes, she told me that she was taking a shower and felt someone was watching her. She thought that it was me, but when she turned around, she didn't see anything. She dropped her towel to show me where she felt someone grab her, and on the midsection of her back, there was a faint black outline of a hand. Sarah asked me if I had seen anything, and I did my best to assure her that things would be okay, and that we must be really tired. She reluctantly agreed. Maybe we'd feel better in the morning, after a good night's sleep. I gave her a hug, and I looked behind her into the bathroom, and I saw another face staring back at me, but it was smiling. In my sleep, I dreamt that I was laying atop the mattress when I started to feel cold. I looked down to see the outlines of hands within the darkness of my bedroom, wrapping their fingers around me. Each bony finger pressing into my skin, squeezing me. My legs, arms, torso, and throat are gripped by countless cold hands. I forced my neck to turn towards Sarah, but the icy grips that were on me forced my head to look up towards the ceiling. Cold fingers prying my eyes open to see. On the ceiling staring down at me were so many faces. No longer outlines, they were so vivid, each face with a different pained expression on them, with one man's face looking down at me with a smile. I awoke the next morning. My body was shivering as I lifted myself from the mattress. I looked over to Sarah, who was still fast asleep. I tried to take in the tranquil sight of her resting until I looked upon the room. It was as if someone had covered their hands in black powder and pressed their hands all around the walls. Handprints of all size, pitch black, sprawling across every corner of the bedroom. I looked up towards the ceiling to see that it was completely covered in the dark outlines of screaming faces. I shook Sarah awake. I couldn't keep this to myself any longer, and when she opened her eyes, I told her about the faces that I'd been seeing. Her face turned into such a pained look as she told me to look around the room. The walls were completely empty. I went to the nearest hardware store, bought so much white paint. As soon as I got back to the house, I picked up a roller and started frantically painting the walls. We spend days painting the entire inside of the house, but those damn stains, those fucking faces keep coming back. Every night that I slept, I'd have the same dream of cold hands gripping me. Lately, I've been hearing something, whispering, coming from the walls, telling me to stay in the house, to be with the house. Have I finally gone crazy? Sarah suggests that we move out, but we had put so much money into this and I refuse to let whatever this is keep coming back. I am not going to let go of this house. It's mine. Right? Sarah is telling me that she is afraid, but she doesn't understand that I'm afraid too. I see them everywhere. They're continuously watching us, and I'm more afraid of what happens to us if they hear us talking about leaving again. Tonight's story featured Lady Spookaria and is titled They Are Everywhere by DarkHeroXX. If you enjoyed this story, please check out DarkHeroXX. His links will be in the description below, as well as check out Lady Spookaria. All her links will be in the description below as well. Hey, did you know I have merch? Well, I do. And if you'd like to walk around representing my realm and gaining new travelers, the links to my merch store as well as all my other social medias will be in the description below. As always, I'd like to say a special thank you to all my lovely Patreons. 242 Reads, Seraphine, the Midnight Bard, Creepy Clown Girl, Mia Mina, Philia Noctis, Hair Raising Narratives, Nightmare's Mistress, Lycan Trucker, and Nathaniel Nelson. If you'd like to join these lovely travelers but I light my fire, you can do so by becoming a Patreon as well. Just remember, support is always appreciated, but it's never expected. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and ding that bell for all future content, as it will really help this channel grow and push this video out into the algorithm.
But as always, travelers, once you step into my realm, there's no stepping out.